Hello YouTube and fellow DC Comic fans, I'm Kelly One Shot, and today we're going to talk about Justice League number 21 from DC Comics, written by Scott Snyder, with artwork by George Jimenez, and colors by Alejandro Sanchez. Also, the plot has been designed by Scott Snyder and George Jimenez, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so we start this story off where we left off in the last issue, where we see Superman face to face with a much older version of himself, a more regal and godlike version of himself, from the future in the 6th dimension. Superman is actually trapped inside of a prison, and he is currently battling the best that he can his future older self, and he's punching him. And obviously the two talked about what happened in between the last issue and this issue, and the older Superman explained what's going on and why he's trapping his younger self inside of this prison. And Superman says that you're a monster. How could you do that? And then the older Superman tells him that there's no point in fighting me. I've explained everything. I told you the truth. And he then tells him that no matter how hard he tries, he can't stop him. And he easily throws Superman down into the ground. And then he tells him that he's looked into every future and every possible scenario. And every single time, it's actually Superman who dooms the multiverse. So he's trying to save everybody by keeping Superman trapped here. Superman is inside of this pocket universe that the older Superman has invented to keep the younger Superman here so he can't doom the rest of the multiverse. After the two talk for a little bit, the older Superman ultimately realizes that Clark's still going to try. He's going to try to escape. He's going to struggle. He's going to fight back. That's just what he does. But the more he does this, the more he loses his powers and the weaker he gets. So eventually, he's not going to be able to fight back. Because here, inside of this pocket dimension, there's no sun, which means Superman's not getting the powers from the Earth's yellow sun. So then, eventually, the older Superman just leaves. He's like, you know what? I have your answer. I know where you stand. And he just leaves. We actually then go to the future, Gotham City, inside of the 6th dimension, where we see Bruce Wayne talking to Dick Grayson. In this future, Dick Grayson has become Batman because Bruce Wayne actually sacrifices his life to make this utopian society possible, and the two of them are talking about some of the things that happen inside of Gotham City, and that ultimately Alfred died of old age, and so they tore down Arkham, and they actually created the Pennyworth home, a place for healing, real healing, not like the type of healing, quote-unquote, that they did at Arkham, but something that can actually really help the community and give back. We also learn the future of several members of the Bat family, including Barbara Gordon, who actually works at the Pennyworth home, and she helps a lot of people here. We also learn that Tim Drake works for Gotham City. We find out that Damian does global patrols with Jonathan Kent, which is pretty cool, because that's pretty much what Superman and Batman did at points in their career. We also learn that Duke also works here at the Pennyworth home with Barbara, and then we vaguely find out what happened to Jason, just really that he's, still him. So the two of them, Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne, actually kind of talk about this future, and Bruce has like this feeling of peace that he doesn't normally feel, and he really enjoys it, and he feels happy, and he says that normally in his timeline, the only time he has this peace is momentarily, and it's right after he's done with his patrols at the end of the night, and it only kind of lasts until he gets to Wayne Manor, because he knows that at the end of the night, Gotham's going to start going crazy, and the criminals are going to come out, and he's going to have to be Batman. So the only time he has this moment of peace is right at the end of the night when he's pretty much done with his shift. But here, he actually feels like this permanent sense of peace, and he really enjoys that. Now, as Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne are talking here, ultimately, Martian Manhunter sends a telepathic communication to Bruce and says that everybody in the Justice League must go to the psychic boardroom that Martian Manhunter is able to create, where they kind of, inside of all their minds, sit at this table where they see each other. So we see Barry Allen the Flash, John Stewart Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Hawkgirl, Wonder Woman, and Batman, and they're all in this psychic boardroom, and they have to talk about an urgent issue, because in the last issue, Martian Manhunter and Hawkgirl found something out about this future and what it took to get this future, because of their future son told them what's going on and that everything isn't as it seems. And that's typically the case with utopian societies. Sometimes it is too good to be true, and ultimately Martian Manhunter tells them that this is a path that we never would have taken. What it took to get to this future is something that we never would have done, so this can't be our future. So they kind of talk about it, and their future child is like really nervous. He's like, he could come back at any point, and if he comes back, he's gonna destroy you, as he surely has your friend. He's talking about the older, more regal-like Superman, and he ultimately tells them all that he doesn't have time to explain to them individually what's happening here. So he's going to use his Martian powers to tell everybody in the Justice League and show them what's going on. But then, right as he's about to do that, every member of the Justice League gets shocked and they're locked here. And then we see the future regal Superman come down and he tells them that I'll tell you guys what's going on. And then Martian Manhunter says, "Who are you? You're not the real Superman. Release us." Then the future Superman says, "On the contrary, I'm the only Superman who can save you." Then they all kind of talk about this for a little bit, and Diana says, "Well, we already know that you're not Superman, so you're lying to us. So how can we trust anything that you have to say?" Then he tells her that this is the most truth that they're ever going to get, that they all have to hear him out, that he was going to eventually reveal himself to them, but first he wanted them to see this universe without being intimidated by who he is or his true face, so he recreated Superman cell by cell so he could make this form to make it more palatable for the Justice League to handle. But he says ultimately, "I guess it's time that I tell you who I am." And he reveals to us that he is the first son of Perpetua, and he is the World Forger, and his brother is the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor. Basically, what we know about the World Forger so far is that he was talked about in DC's Metal Dark Knights, and he is the one who creates worlds, and he monitors the worlds to see if they're able to join the multiverse. It's pretty weird, his job there, but he also, like, kind of axes off the negative worlds that aren't going to succeed, and he had a dragon that got rid of these negative worlds. That dragon was actually Barbados, and Barbados ultimately, it says in Dark Knight's Metal that he killed the World Forger, and that he started just allowing these dark multiverses to grow and create, and that was what happened during DC's Dark Knight Metal. But this is like an overspill of that story ultimately, so I'm kind of confused why the World Forger is still alive, but he's clearly a supreme being on the level of the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor, and he is one of the 3 sons of Perpetua who apparently created our multiverse. So he tells them all this, and he says that this multiverse is his masterpiece. But know this, Justice League, this is also your only hope. We actually then go back to our Earth in the 3rd dimension, where Mr. Mistopodius is still raging and turning into this monster, and he's kind of destroying everything, and Starman and Mara, as well as Jarro, are all doing their best to fight Mr. Mixopotamus, and Starro's trying to read his mind here in this situation, and then Starro reveals that Mr. Mixopotamus is normally, he imagined things into reality, but right now, he's doing the opposite. So he's actually unimagining everything in existence. So we actually, it's a pretty cool scene. It's one of my favorite in this book, where we see the big Mr. Proteus raging, and then on the bottom here, the colors are fading out, and we see it looks like a drawing, and then we see the pen breaking that's drawing the page. So this is meta. This is very meta. So essentially, our multiverse is slowly being erased because of Mr. Mistopodius, which is going to make room for the World Forger's new multiverse that's going to replace the existing one, and that he prefers that the Justice League chooses to willingly side with him, and that they join in on his plan to do this, but Batman asks, "What are you asking us to become?" Then ultimately the World Forger tells them that days from now, Lex Luthor is going to make an argument for doom to every living being, and that this moment is the beginning of the end in every multiverse he's explored, except for one, where one of them devises a plan to predict who will side with justice and who will side with doom. And then the Justice League, I guess in this one scenario, decides that they're going to make this the first strike, that they're going to incapacitate all of those who would stand up against them, that they're pretty much just going to go around and imprison anybody who they think is going to side with doom, and then eventually those who don't and those who they're not able to imprison, they're ultimately going to go to war with. And that's this final war that they've talked about here. And they're eventually just going to go to star system after star system, killing people, killing planets, imprisoning any who stand against justice, which ultimately, that's not justice, which is what Martian Manhunter was saying, that this isn't the path that they would take. So this multiverse here that the World Forger is suggesting is a nightmare. This actually pisses the World Forger off. He says, I've made you a nightmare? You're all the ones who ruined the multiverse that I built by breaking the source wall and allowing Perpetua to wake. And he says, do you know what the cost of chaining her was last time? Because ultimately the last time Perpetua was out, it took the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger to alert the beings who are on the same level as Perpetua about what she was doing in creating this multiverse out of doom, and then they were able to chain her and lock her away behind the source wall. But now that the Justice League destroyed the source wall in Dark Knight's Metal, all of this is happening. And then he says that he's very sorry and he's very regretful, but he's hoping that the heroes would act heroically here. And he says that our multiverse had a chance to evolve into a justice formation that is much greater than this fake utopian society that he's showing them right now. But he says now our only hope is to make something fast and brutal, where everyone will die when we reach the judges. Now the judges, it brings up something very cool to me, because what I see as the judges, because they've talked about it, is those who will deem if the multiverses are worthy or if they're not worthy. And to me, that sounds like kind of like an outside of comic thing. Like maybe it's the producers at DC Comics, like DiDio and Jim Lee. I don't know whether they're going to decide what's good and what's bad. And maybe Scott Snyder is kind of referencing that a little bit here. But it also brings up the question, are these judges going to be something we're going to see down the road? Are they going to be something that are stronger than Perpetua? Are they going to be on the same level as Perpetua when we eventually deal with her? Or are they going to be a future threat after Perpetua? So I'm very curious about that, and I kind of want to learn more about that here. Ultimately, we find out that this is the point of cosmic crisis, and that they need to make a decision here. So he's telling them all, what are we going to do? What are you guys going to do? Are you going to side with me or not? And then Martian Manhunter said, this is not a choice. This is not who we are. And the League talks about their decision, and John Jones then tells them all that several months ago, in a boardroom just like this, they were all talking about whether they would allow the totalitarian to hit Earth or not. And he says that every day after has been a discovery, and there's been some good and some terrifying, but with everything that has happened, he would still make the same decision. His vote would still be the same no matter what, because he believes that they can stand up to this evil and they can face this situation, and that they should all vote as a team to make the same choice and to keep pushing forward here. And everybody in the League actually agrees with this, except for Batman. He says he wouldn't have made that same choice again. And then Kendra says, you know, we can always turn this around. And then Batman says, can we? Really? Since our battle with Barbados, we keep taking one step forward and two steps back, and that they're losing ground, and that the stakes are just too high right now, but we keep clinging on to what? Then the child of Martian Manhunter says, you're clinging on to hope. And then Batman says, maybe it's time to stop believing in hope. This actually disappoints Wonder Woman, and she says the Superman would never agree to this, a future where we save only the good. That's not justice. And I guess that's what the World Forger was saying, is that Superman would always doom the universe because he would never make that decision. He would never choose to imprison those or kill those who would side with doom. He believes in rehabilitation and stopping them, but not killing them, not imprisoning them indefinitely without hope. And the World Forger then yells at Wonder Woman and says that this is the only future that's possible. Make no mistake, this is the only choice that will save you. But he says, you know what? You guys talk about it, you think about it, you know what? You've already made your decision, so you're gonna have to live with it. And he says that he regrets it. And then he sends all the members of the Justice League to this apocalyptic society that we actually find out is Apocalypse, and this is where all of the prisoners, all of the people who would side with Doom, and everybody that this Justice League in prison to get this utopian society was sent. And it's actually the planet of Apocalypse, and we see all of these prison cells where we mainly see, like, you know, Captain Cold's there, we see Bane there, we see, what's that, Mongol there, and they're all like, where are we? how do we get out of here? We gotta find Superman. But then they get attacked by this army, and they seem to be in like these mechanical suits that can fly and have these strong laser guns, and they're the ones who run the show here on Apokolips, and they actually say, we're the Justice League. Martian Manhunter says, we're the Justice League. We're not your enemies. Who the hell are you? And then the leader of this group actually says, who the hell am I? I'm Lois Lane. I run this place. So Lois Lane in this future society runs the prison. She looks gritty. She looks war-torn, and she looks battle-tested, and she's dead serious about this. And that's the end of the issue. So I'm really curious where it's going to go from here, because we have Superman still trapped. He's losing power. Now the Justice League is all inside of Apokolips in the 6th dimension, in that future multiverse that the World Forger has created. This opens up a lot more questions. There are some answers that we didn't get. I really wanted to find out about that Barry Allen from the 6th dimension future, but we didn't, or whichever Flash it actually is. But either way, I thoroughly enjoyed this issue. I like what's going on here. I like the way that Scott Snyder and even George Jimenez, because it's really cool to find out that he's a part of this like plot that they're assembling here with this, what is it called? This 6th dimension, and the next issue is called Legion of Doom, Saviors of Earth, ? Which is chapter 3 in the 6th dimension storyline. Looking forward to it. Thought this was a tremendous issue. Like I said, a lot of questions answered, a lot of questions brought up, and I'm looking forward to see where it goes from here. Either way, I don't really have much more to say on this, so I'm Kelly One Shot. Take care, have a great day, and goodbye!